So what makes a company willing to adopt the practice when it's so bleedingly obvious? You get a 95% reduction and then you can prove it again, but then still there's parts of the industry that don't want to take it up. Maybe they're mired in whatever they think their bottom line is. What are the sort of challenges you faced in trying to get this through to certain people? And then what are the qualities of those groups that just adopt it straight away, like it's common sense?
Yeah, well, it boils down to when seabed bycatch mitigation researchers like myself and colleagues around the world, when you're trying to develop what might become new practices and new techniques, they take a while to evolve, go through the R&D processes. Ideally, the regulations that govern the behaviour of the fishery evolve in parallel.
Yes.
Because once you put solutions on the table, you can be sure that it's a bit of a step up for a fisherman. There'll be a little bit extra cost, an extra procedure to do on vessels. After they get used to it, they don't know any different.
Yeah.
And young guys who come into the industry, they don't know any different either. But if the regulations haven't evolved, then uptake's going to be really difficult. And the example I gave you about the integrated weight longline and the adoption rate of that, the collaborative fishing company in New Zealand was taking its vessel into the Antarctic to catch Antarctic toothfish, to catch Patagonian toothfish.
Yeah.
They're pretty valuable deep water, bottom dwelling fish. They had an incentive to change their fishing practices because they were hell-bent on maintaining their fishing license. They didn't want to be excluded, and they didn't want to be named and shamed in the annual meeting of all the stakeholders in this particular fishery, which involved a lot of people and 27, 28 countries involved. Yep. So they had an incentive to change. And prior to the development of the integrated weight longline, the working group in this organisation that governs the Southern Ocean fisheries, one of the conservation measures in general was setting the lines at night in the dark. So birds couldn't see the baited hooks.
Okay.
But in Antarctica in summer, there is no night. So we had to come up with an alternative conservation measure, and we just sort of winged it a bit. We set a minimum sink rate standard on the fishing gear, but it wasn't really related to whether or not seabirds would be caught. It was just a practical change to the fishing gear that fishermen could cope with. 0.3 meters a second. It's not the speed at which albatrosses and petrels dive at. We didn't know that at the time. And the only way they could achieve the 0.3 meters a second was to attach 5 or 6 kilogram sort of lead sinkers to their long line every 30 or 40 meters as it was being paid out of the vessel. And when they hauled the bag in again, every time one of these weights came over the side, they had to stop the line hauler and take the weight off and somehow get it back to the stern of the vessel for the next set. Now that was an absolute pain in the backside doing that, stopping the line hauler and when ice all over that part of the boat and it's freezing. And so that opened the door to alternative techniques and putting the weight inside the long line. And once it proved to be effective operationally and also seabed conservation-wise, once it was endorsed by the management organisation, that's when the chain reaction took place and they all adopted it. The short answer is they had an incentive.